first of all, explain to us what was the party's manifesto and the so-called dementia tax all about?
Well, the dementia tax was this idea that people who need social care, elderly people who may be disabled, for example, requiring help simply with preparing food, getting dressed and washed in the morning. And at the moment there's a kind of mixed economy for how that is paid for. Some of it is paid for by local authorities, the local councils in Britain, and some of it is paid for by families. Now the costs of this are continually increasing as we have an ageing population, and obviously it's an increasing burden on taxpayers in Britain. So for many years now, politicians have been trying to find a solution to this problem, a financial solution as well as a policy solution. And the idea that was proposed in the manifesto, which was a surprise to everyone, was the idea that an elderly person's resources, finances, for example their house, if it was worth more than £100,000 when they die, and if they'd been using social care, then the government would in a sense take the value, the money from the sale of the house above £100,000 when that person dies. So that's, I suppose, at its simplest, what they were proposing originally in the manifesto.
Mm-hmm. Now, Professor Brooks, explain to us what this cap is all about and what the controversy is all about, and the fact that she came out immediately to explain that nothing has changed.
Well, part of the controversy around this is at first she had her front bench saying that there was no cap that was going to be on this policy, and then a day or two later she says that there will be a cap. There's nothing about there being a cap that I recall seeing in the manifestos as new information. There is talk about a green paper, so if the government wins the election, then they were going to have some proposals for people to discuss and debate about what this new system might look like, and it could have a number of options, but she seemed to be preempting a lot of the conclusions that we would find in that green paper, that would be, in a sense, the government's view, although not the government's view in the manifesto. And in a sense, the manifesto is saying one thing, and she is very clearly, I think, saying something else. And this has been a real issue, not just the mixed messages, but the entire Conservative Party campaign is centered around her stable and strong leadership and unbending in the face of adversity, so she can stand up to the other leaders of Europe, but then can't stand up to a couple of days of scrutiny by the public.
Mr. McSmith, do you share that view? What are possibly the reasons behind her apparent U-turn?
Well, to go back a bit, what's very unusual about all this is that in the middle of elections, the political parties tend to promise all the good things they're going to do for the British public, and they keep a bit quiet about anything they're going to do that's going to hurt people. So the reason that the announcement was such a surprise in the first place was that there in the Conservative manifesto was a promise, or a threat if you like, that was actually going to hurt people, and it was aimed at the people who are going to be hit by it are people who you would normally expect to vote Conservative. So it was, in some sense, quite a brave thing to do, and the reason that I think they felt able to do it is because this election is unusual in that one party, the Conservatives, have been so far ahead in all the opinion polls that they may well have felt they'd won the election anyway, so they might as well get out the bad news now, so that once they're in power and do this, they can say to the public, well, we told you we were going to do this, this is not a surprise. They were taken aback by how extreme the reaction was, so that people took it very badly. The fact it was given this name, dementia tax, is very bad for the Conservatives. And so Theresa May felt she had to give in, as Professor said, it's not good for her image as a strong and stable leader that she's had to give in like this.
So the media, as you said, the media has reacted pretty strongly. Why has the media come out so strongly against it, again, to Mr. McSmith? And is it really a U-turn we're seeing, or something that, you know, in her words, is just a further clarification?
Well, to try and answer the first point, the newspapers here, or the journalists covering elections, they do tend to get bored after a while. And for days and days they've been reporting about how the Conservatives are miles ahead and that their main rivals, the Labour Party, were in dreadful trouble. So when they were suddenly able to seize upon a story that was different from what they'd been writing before, I think they all leapt upon it like hungry people seeing the sight of food. So there's that aspect to it. And I don't think anybody thought, I don't think even the newspapers that support the Conservative Party felt that this was going to be so damaging that they'd lose the election. So they felt free to have a good go at them.
So
so that's that. Now, as to whether it's a U-turn, it might be slightly the wrong turn, because the word U-turn, it sounds like, you know, she started going this way and had to turn right round and go back the way she came. No, she hasn't completely backed down on the original policy, but she has altered it, and it was a pretty humiliating thing to have to do in the middle of a general election.
Mr. Bagguley, now after the release of the manifesto, recent polls show that the Conservative Party's lead over the Labour Party halved to 9%, adding to signs that the race for the election is tightening ahead of the June 8th vote. Now, Theresa May has insisted, as I said, that this was simply a clarification and nothing has changed, or at least the basic principles of the policy were unchanged. What are the basic principles she's referring to?
I think the basic principles are that people will have to make some kind of contribution to paying for their social care, but that leaves things incredibly vague and uncertain. The only thing that we really know is that there is this proposal for the first £100,000 of someone's resources, someone's estate, someone's money, will not be kind of taken from them. But we don't know the level of the cap, we don't know precisely how it will work, we don't know precisely whether or not what will happen if the elderly person who dies is married or has other dependents. So it leaves families, the local authorities, the local councils who provide care, and the private companies that provide care in a very uncertain situation. We simply don't know what the policy will be in detail. Mm-hmm. And simply saying there will be a green paper, which obviously will take time to prepare, there will be consultations on that green paper, and then there will be legislation drafted. What they are doing, in a sense, is pushing any real decisions about this well into the next Parliament. So it's really a situation of incredible uncertainty.
Professor Brooks, right ahead of the elections, doing this, leaving huge amount of uncertainty instead of clearing things up. How do you think this might affect the election results?
Well, I think it's affecting it a bit already. That what was the main the big lead that we saw Theresa May and the Conservatives has been dented. Of course, Labour has much more distance to make up before things really go the other way. But what's happened already should send alarm bells in a month time to have this dramatic change. I think this is very much a known goal. I accept the points entirely that have been said by the other commentators. This really was a surprising thing for them to put in the manifesto, to sneak in the last minute. It seemed to surprise senior cabinet ministers as well. And I think the biggest damage at all, and the big thing for the election, is that everything, politicians can change their mind about things all the time. Politics is often a very fluid entity. But what's different about this is that everything has been pinned on one person being strong and stable, someone unshakable, that there's no reverse of course. Yet, in Theresa May, yet here we have a change. It's put doubt in people's minds. She's been, seems that she's lack of certainty, clarity about what her position is. This is following on very recently over her promise that there would not be a snap election. She then called it, and these are leading to a lot of doubts, I think, in people's mind about how strong and stable this Prime Minister really is.
Well, Mr. McSmith, my last question now, it's reported that it was not the first time that May has shifted in her policy. Actually, the media listed a number of U-turns she made since taking office. Why has she been so consistent? And if she wins the election, do you think she will be less inclined to shift policies?
Well, it's quite true that there are other, not so much U-turns, there are certainly other failures, but of course you have to recognise that she's been in politics a long time, and the job that she had before she was Prime Minister as Home Secretary is a notorious graveyard of political reputations. So we shouldn't think from this one mistake that she's just a hopeless case. She's a pretty clever woman, and I suspect that if she can avoid making another blunder like this, they'll still win the election. What it doesn't really bode that well for the main thing that the UK faces in the next few years, which is the Brexit negotiations, because she is going to go in to deal with people who are much more experienced in negotiating than she is, because the Europeans do this all the time. Britons haven't been doing this for years.
Indeed, a tough time ahead.
And
yeah, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much.